What the f are you thinking? Where the f did that come from? I need a drink. I need you. Are you f***ing serious? A -4. I did not want to rank any of these, James, because they all have equal impact, either personally for me as a child, personally for me as a worker, and now as a retired wrestler. They have, it's sometimes even more things that I can appreciate, kind of like the Bret versus the Shawn thing. I said, I love Shawn as a worker, and he's the reason I got into the business. But with this current job and project of analyzing, breaking down nuanced detail, I have so much more of an appreciation for the little things that Bret does in each and every move. So we can do an entire 10 years on what went right videos with Bret. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So there's no ranking. There's no number 1 to number 12. They all have equally memorable moments, memorable matches, memorable cards. And one of the criteria is number 1 right here, as Chris puts it up in the B-roll. Number 1, drawing money, the amount of money drawn on that show. And if that match was responsible, which usually it is, for that money being drawn. Number 2, I just said it, creating memorable moments or just that one moment. That's all it takes. But some of these have multiple moments within their match, not even in the build-up storyline, which is also very important. Number 3, the storyline leading up to the match. The anticipation to see when these guys or girls finally get into the ring, what will happen. That's what, I mean, that's Dusty Rhodes. That's Shawn Michaels. That's a whole bunch of people. That's The Rock, Austin. They could talk the people into the building, literally, or in this case, a lot of these are actually stadiums. All right, number 4, the historical reference. In other words, did this match alter the course of wrestling history? Did this create a new era, create a new look? Did this save the company? Did this put the company on a level never seen before? I feel like these 4, and there's many more, pieces of criteria, but I think these are the 4 pillars, to use an AEW term, of my 5-star match analysis.
I came up a couple of days ago on Twitter, and I came up with 5. So you tell me, and I have probably painted myself into a corner that I couldn't think of a single match that actually, maybe 1 or 2 that would qualify for all 5. Is number 1, getting everybody over in a match, more so than they were before. Number 2, fan anticipation and reaction. So that goes to your point of build-up. Number 3, drawing huge money on the day. That's an easy one. Number 4, the match leading to increased business/ticket sales/viewership afterwards. And number 5, long-term company growth caused in part by that match.
Yeah, I think I condensed those down. Those are excellent points to kind of intersect with mine. A historical reference is kind of a all-in-one catch-all of the things we talked about, that certain moments, and we'll talk about when we go to the whiteboard, the one moment I think saved WWE from going out of business. One particular moment in one match, and I think everybody knows what that is, and it involves people that, we've compared to in the past. So there's your little teaser on that. So
while Stevie's off to the whiteboard, he also wrote down for certain matches the gate and the buy rate as well. So I'll be looking forward to I'm looking forward to exactly what you picked, indeed. So over to you, Stevie, and the whiteboard. Take it away.
Thank you, James. What we're looking at right here is a list of 5-star matches like we talked about when we were sitting down. I have 12 here. I told you about 6. The other 6 will be your reaction to what they have out there. You'll find out when everybody else does out there. But as I said with my criteria about drawing money, storyline, all that stuff, this is the criteria where I picked 12. Now, there's a lot more than 12, and that's the best part about being a pro wrestling fan. You have more than 12, way more than 12. We could be doing episodes, so hopefully this will be a continuing series. Comment below and let us know if you want to see further videos of more 5-star matches. Obviously, people want to see probably the worst matches in wrestling. Well, I was part of a few of those, but let's just talk about these. Number 1, not ranked, just our first 5-star match, WrestleMania 18, Rock versus Hogan, attendance 68,237, a gate of 3.9 million. Just to remind anybody out there about this, remind everybody out there, I should say, we are going to have a What Went Right segment featuring some of the most memorable moments from some of these 5-star matches, including Rock versus Hogan, where they did the famous kind of scanning the crowd, the face-off, looking right, looking left, looking back at each other, and people actually popped for the bell ring. For the bell ring, the people came up on their feet, and the interesting part about this was, you go back and watch it if you haven't watched it. If you haven't watched it, shame on you. Rock was a babyface. Hogan was the leader of the New World Order, not the Blue World Order, the New World Order, the real one. And he was a heel. And they had tried to eliminate The Rock by driving a tractor trailer into his ambulance after they beat him down. So basically, you figure Rock would be coming out like the #1 babyface and Hogan would be hated. But Pat Patterson, at least the story I heard, was very aware how much the Toronto crowd, the Canadian crowd, loved Hulk Hogan, and sometimes they would do the opposite of what they should. They would hijack the show. So they prepared for Hogan being a babyface and Rock being a heel, and that's what makes this match so memorable, besides the fact you got Hogan, a star in the 80s and the 90s, against the new generation, the Attitude Era, Rock. So it was eras, it was generations coming together to battle in this match. So that's why I feel like that was a 5-star match, besides just these two numbers right here, which are really incredible for the time. Next one, I think everybody's going to know why I picked this. Survivor Series 1997, the Montreal Screwjob. Everybody remembers that moment. The sharpshooter on Bret. Bret goes to turn it around. Before that happens, Hebner rings the bell. Earl Hebner calls for the bell, and then Bret ends up spitting on Vince, spitting right in his face, and destroying everything and doing the WCW thing. Did I do it backwards? I'm not even sure. He did it right, so he knew what he was doing. Attendance, 20,593. We could not find the gate number, so if anybody could comment below with how much money was drawn at the gate. But I said it when we sat down, James. This here, this moment right here, I believe saved the WWE from going out of business. Because basically Austin was a part of that too, but I'm saying this moment had people talking. This moment here created the evil Mr. McMahon character, the greatest heel in wrestling history. And if Mr. McMahon wasn't created off of this, Steve Austin would not have been the babyface and would not have a viable heel to make him one of the most over baby faces in wrestling history. So that's why I feel like this is a pivotal moment, maybe in all of wrestling history, but definitely in the survival and then the thriving of the WWE after that. So go right here, WrestleMania 13, Bret versus Austin. Once again, we have a moment here that makes two guys. Right here, we're going to go through the attendance and gate. 8,197. This was in Chicago. I miss these smaller WrestleManias, like in the intimate, like here or Boston or the Garden, and they still drew a gate of $837,150. So this was the infamous double turn. Austin was a heel, but the fans were cheering him. Bret was a babyface that was still kind of a babyface, but a little bit lukewarm with the reaction. Austin was definitely getting more reactions, and we're going to talk about it in the What Went Right segment with this, with Shawn and Hogan. These are going to be part of that What Went Right whiteboard segment with video. But here, Bret has him in the sharpshooter. Special referee Ken Shamrock, a whole entire different thing there that was cool post-match with Bret. Austin did not give up. He was in the sharpshooter an insane amount of times, and Bret is known to kind of torque that sharpshooter, so I give him credit. So he may have really passed out, for real, because he passed out and he didn't give up. So therefore, got Austin way more over as a babyface. Also, the famous shot of Austin pushing up, trying to get out of the sharpshooter with the blood pouring down his face, his teeth turning blood red. Just a moment in history that cannot, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. That's awesome. Next one, more recently, Cody versus Roman. This is WrestleMania 40. This is a rematch. This is where the story was finished. The ending of this match, we don't have any video footage of this because, quite frankly, the last 7 to 9 minutes, whatever it is some of the best, most perfectly booked finishes that I've ever seen. So here we have a combined gate over 2 days. And I was one that was a doubter of the 2-day WrestleManias. But these figures right here, I'm happy to be wrong. 145,298 people over the course of 2 days. And they drew $38.5 million. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible and deserves, besides the match being awesome. The way it was booked, the way it was worked, Cody and Roman are two of the greatest workers in the company, maybe in history, and that's why they drew that right there. Obviously, Rocky and everybody around that match also drew as well and contributed, but these guys had to do the match. So they drew just based off of this story. Next one, here you go, James. SummerSlam, Bret versus Bulldog for the Intercontinental title, $78,927, $3.65 million gate. Now, here's my question. After he won the match, did Bulldog tattoo that attendance number onto his arm?
He should have done.
Should have. Maybe this year. So this is what they drew, and this was 1992, correct, James?
992.
92. 3.6 Philly. These numbers, I mean, obviously this number is current, but these numbers like this one, and we're going to get down to WrestleMania 3 in a second, I want to adjust that for inflation. So maybe Chris can put in 3.65 million, use the inflation calculator for 2024. My guess is with inflation, this could be considered an almost $10 million house. I'm just averaging it, but my God, and then even more impressive number is when it comes down to WrestleMania 3. By the way, we have footage that we're going to show them what went right for Bret versus Bulldog, as well as Hogan versus Andre. WrestleMania 3, the opening of the match was almost the quickest match in history, where Hogan tried to slam Andre. Andre fell on him, and it was that 1, 2, maybe 3 count. I don't know if it was booked. I don't know, because Andre was so big that Hogan had trouble getting the shoulder up. It's just one of those wrestling urban legends that we'll probably actually do a show on wrestling urban legends and conspiracies. 93,173. By the way, some of these attendance numbers, like this one, people say differently. There's different WWE's numbers and then the official numbers, or turnstile numbers, I believe they call it, like they did with Wembley with AEW. $1.6 million house right there. I don't know what he did there. $1.6 million house. And then when we come down here, this is why I put this in here and not the other ones, because I wasn't sure. $10.3 million in pay-per-view buy rates in 1987. Adjusted for inflation, I can't imagine what that number is. That's incredible. Now, you ready for the next 6 to surprise you?
Well, do you know, just before you go to that, Stevie, while you were discussing all those matches, I was frantically finding out what Dave Meltzer had ranked every single one of those matches. I've got an answer for every single one of them.
Thank you.
So what was the top one again? Was that Hogan Rock?
Rock Hogan. What did Meltzer rate it?
You guess first.
3.5 stars.
3 stars.
Wow, even worse than that. Bret versus Shawn, I'd say 3.5.
3 3/4. Do you know what? Until the ending,
nobody's going to break 4 stars in this, are they?
Keep going. Keep going.
Bret versus Austin, I would say 4.
5.
Good. Good man. Cody versus Roman, 4.
4 3/4.
Let's just round. Give them 5 stars. Like
I know.
Bret versus Bulldog. I would give this 5 stars.
4.5 for Dave.
Really? They give Bret versus Bulldog a lower rating than Cody versus Roman?
Yeah, so he did. I mean, I know you'd say these are all 5 stars, but okay, and the most interesting one, Hulk Hogan versus Andre.
Well, because Savage and Steamboat, also a 5-star match on the show, but didn't draw the house, as Al Snow would argue, and I would agree with him. I'd say 2.5 stars.
-4. Your screen is not frozen, ladies and gentlemen. That's Stevie Richards' brain has frozen from that review.
All right, I'm okay. All right, I have to give him credit again. Dave Meltzer was a troll before trolls were even known on social media. He's got to be trolling. Can you bleep this out?
What I can bleep something out.
What the f*** are you thinking? Where the f*** did that come from? I need a drink.
So before your head explodes, let's go to the next 6 then. I'm going to do the same thing. So while you're explaining it all, I'm going to find out what Dave Meltzer voted them or ranked them. Wait.
I mean, are you f***ing serious? A -4? F*** off. That's my British right there. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's going to be even worse. WrestleMania 6, Warrior versus Hogan. I'm sure it's got -10 stars right here. Attendance 67,678, a gate of $3.9 million. Here we have babyface versus babyface, title versus title. Build up from Royal Rumble. This is the most proper build up of any main event in WrestleMania history. I believe so. It was the old Rumble. One of them didn't even win the Rumble. Like Warrior didn't win the Rumble to get the title shot. It was just purely storyline based. Everything here was booked to perfection, and Hogan could say whatever he wants, but it was a smart move to put Warrior over Hogan. Never in WWE history at the time, WWF, did they ever promote a babyface versus a babyface match. This was truly a taboo type of match, taboo storyline that drew money. It drew money. So this is my 5-star. What does he say? Do you want me to sit down?
3.75. Let me just say this actually, Stevie, with that, and I'm sorry to interrupt the list, but it wasn't the first time that WWF or WWF had been, promoted on a big show, babyface versus babyface. I think there was, very famously, there was Bruno Sammartino versus Pedro Morales, and they did a couple more, super shows, maybe like an earlier showdown at Shea or whatever, with babyface matches. The problem is that they didn't really draw. I mean, they drew a decent house, of course, but the fact was that the matches were always a bit of a letdown because back in those days, you loved them both. You don't cheer for anyone. So that's why the WWF did it so infrequently. And until, I'd argue, Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, they never got the formula right.
No, and the stage of WrestleMania is a lot different. Those Shea Stadium shows, or some of the shows they did in New York and outdoor venues, I think they even did a huge Puerto Rico show as well in WWE in a stadium. But for WrestleMania or modern era storyline TV pay-per-view, this was still uncharted territory. I wasn't aware of the Bruno Pedro thing. But then again, back then, these two were very strong baby faces that they were in storyline still kind of helping each other out, but becoming a little bit more aggressive towards each other. It was just, you got to watch from Rumble. They probably have a big package leading up then. And of course, the Ultimate Warrior promo about putting Hogan in the airplane and having the airplane crash as he takes the controls. That was a bit heelish, but it was the Warrior. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it that got him over. So I still believe here because it created a moment, and it also, Hogan put somebody over right there, putting somebody over clean, even though he kind of kicked out. We have a video footage of this as well. He kicked out on 3 like Mr. Hughes used to do all the time in ECW. He kicked out right on 3 to keep himself over. This was the passing of the torch. And I think Vince did a good thing by trying to at least experiment with the Ultimate Warrior era. They claim he didn't draw, he didn't do whatever, but Warrior was probably the only guy that was anywhere near as over as Hogan at the time. So, like Vince famously does, let's end this before it actually does jump the shark. So I think he was thinking Hogan's here, and little did he know, Hogan had another few decades left in him. But this is definitely, I think this is, and I watched this as a kid, and this is one of the matches that made me want to be a wrestler. That solidified me wanting to be a pro wrestler. All right, next.
Let me just add one more thing to that as well. With Warrior and Hogan, it had a finish. It had a definitive finish as well. Whereas the other babyface versus babyface mega matches, maybe Bob Backlund and Harley Race, I can't remember if they were both babyfaces as an example. They always went to a double count out or a DQ or time limit draw. And I think that was another thing that the fans probably picked up on, that they knew, especially if it was going to be a quote-unquote unification title match, NWA and WWF, you knew they weren't getting, unified.
You knew you were going to, you just knew you were going to get robbed an actual finish because both baby faces still needed to stay over. Maybe you couldn't formulate that in your head, but deep down the fans know, well, there's going to be a DQ because they can't sacrifice one of their beloved baby faces in the company. But here they actually did. You're right. Vince was brave enough to pull the trigger and not, I think that the Toronto crowd they might have rioted if you gave him like anything less than a solid finish. That's just my opinion. So moving on. All right, Survivor. Oh, I put the wrong, I messed up. We'll update that. That's WrestleMania. WrestleMania in Orlando, Florida. Flair versus Shawn. This is a retirement match, by the way. If Flair loses, he retires. So the stakes automatically and the storyline are right there. Attendance, 74,635. Drew a gate of $5.8 million. I think everybody remembers the moment. And we'll have a video whiteboard segment in the What Went Right. I'm sorry, I love you. Super kick, sweet chin music. Immediately after the cover, cradles Ric Flair and just talks to him and tells him how much he loves him. One of the greatest moments, not just in WrestleMania history, but all of wrestling history. What does Dave make? He's got to give this 5 stars.
Is that what your guess is?
That's what my hopeful guess is.
3.5.
Okay. Next.
Do you know the funny thing about the Flair thing is that everyone knew that it was heading towards WrestleMania. There was a match with MVP, I think, at this is 2008, at the Royal Rumble, and everyone knew that Ric Flair was going to win it. But it doesn't matter. Everybody knew that he was going to retire at WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels was going to win. There was like no doubt, and it doesn't matter. Which I know I always bring up Dutch Mantel, but it's like, you know what? You promise something to the fans, then you give it to them.
Yeah, this isn't
explicitly promised.
This isn't the time for a Russo swerve. You gotta go straight. Occam's razor, the simplest explanation and path. The direct path is the way to go. All right. WrestleMania 25, Taker versus Shawn, 72,744, a gate of $6.9 million. You could lump in like you did on the show notes, James. Next year in Arizona, WrestleMania 26, they literally topped it. They topped it from there. So this here is a great show, but it shows how these guys can have a great match, great chemistry. They've wrestled Hell in a Cell. They've wrestled since right in the beginning of the Attitude Era to here, and their matches were always fresh. They always had something new. And then back-to-back WrestleManias to still be a draw, and still, that was the one WrestleMania in Arizona where Shawn, once again, a retirement match. This is why I love this too. Flair retirement match, Shawn beats him. Then Shawn's turn to put his career up on the line, and Taker beats him. The streak versus the career, which I feel like right there was probably one of the fewest times that there really was a toss-up. And I don't know if it was a toss-up creatively, but there was a toss-up because is Shawn really going to retire? He still works great. He looks great. Or is it finally going to be the end of the streak? I think fans went into that match legitimately not knowing the next year one, not this one, legitimately not knowing who was going to win the match.
Both matches got the exact same rating. I think both 4 3/4.
All right. I can't say I'm surprised at this point, but that's okay. All right. WrestleMania 28. This is the first time they've had this match. Rock versus Cena, 78,363, $8.9 million house. They repeated the match, WrestleMania 29, and that's why I'm not going to give it to them again. We're not going to do repeats of that, or we would have two right here in this box for both WrestleManias, which I should have did because each Taker versus Shawn match is a wrestling clinic. Rock versus Cena is just a big fight feel. I didn't use that yet, but Rock versus Cena has the big fight feel. So that's where I put that. So what did I'm sure this got to have a Hogan Andre star rating. That's my guess.
3 3/4.
Really? Is the 3.5, 3 3/4 or 4 3/4 kind of still kind of trolling? Like you're not going to give me 5. Almost just give the other quarter star to get it to a 4 or 5. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like technically, they're special people anyway. They're great workers. Are they great wrestlers? No, but a lot of great workers are not great wrestlers. That's Kurt Angle. By the way, we left Kurt Angle off because we are going to dedicate an entire show for how underrated Kurt Angle is to this day. And I wish I was as shredded as him. He must be doing Athlete X. We got to get back to doing that, James. So people are going to get mad about this. WrestleMania 29, Punk versus Taker. Rock versus Cena with the rematch was a big draw for the rematch. But this here, dude, this is a 5-star match up and down, and Taker and Punk together, 2 different sizes, but still be able to work because Punk is smaller than Shawn in some ways, but to be able to work Taker and hang with him is awesome. 80,767, $12.3 million house. I give credit to Rock and Cena or the entire card. You came back the next year with the same main event and drew almost $4 million more at the gate. Not to mention the buy rates are probably really good. But this here, I think it was the week before, the go-home show, when Punk took the urn and basically poured it on Undertaker after hitting him with it. And this was after Paul Bearer passed away. And Paul Bearer would have loved the fact that they used him passing away as part of a storyline for this match. And obviously Paul Heyman, who kind of looks like Paul Bearer now, more like Paul Bearer than Paulie Dangerously, he dressed up like Paul Bearer as well. So a lot of heat going into this match. Did I think Punk was going to end Taker's streak? I didn't quite know, James, because Punk, nobody thought he would win the world title multiple times. Nobody thought he'd be a main eventer. Nobody thought. So I wasn't sure if they were going to really like strap the Rocket to Punk and really give him that right there. Also, I think what made me think that they weren't going to do that was, even though you couldn't go last after the main event of Rock and Cena, if Punk was going over, I think they would have repositioned him on the card to create that moment. So it kind of gave away that Taker was going to go over, but this is an awesome match. What did Meltzer give it?
4.5 stars. It's funny how this match actually ends up being one of the catalysts for Punk leaving because he wasn't in the main event and The Rock was.
And he didn't get paid. Well, his famous thing was then if he had gotten paid like he was in the main event, I think he would have quieted it down a little bit. Because I did during that podcast where he got all in trouble with the Colt Cabana thing, he said that right to Hunter, then pay me like I'm in the main event. It's a good point, isn't it? Because Triple H said, well, you are in the main event. You're wrestling Taker. And it's like semantics, you know what I mean? All right, next.
Yeah, keep in mind that Triple H was the one who put himself above. He actually campaigned to put himself above The Rock and Hollywood Hulk Hogan. in that same event. Let's not forget when he wrestled Jericho in that far less than stellar match.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
And they
that.
were fighting over the custody of a bulldog, and that was that was the build up. Sorry, it's the build up for Triple H and Stephanie, and Jericho also happened to be there.
I remember that. Yeah, they really cut Chris's you-know-what off during that time as champion and just made him a lackey and kind of a middleman or a third wheel type thing. Is that what you're talking about? Where it's just like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
title had nothing to do with it. I did give you 11, but it works out better anyway. You know why?
Go on.
I just want to piss Meltzer off some more. Hogan versus Andre again. I mistakenly put that in there, but I only have 11 for you. That's it. Sorry, I thought I had 12. False advertising. Sorry. So that's my 11 right now. But I'll tell you the truth. This can go into the 3 figures of matches like this throughout wrestling history. And I think that's a good thing for fans of any age, any sort, to go back and watch these. But there's going to definitely be more 5-star matches in the future. Or, as Meltzer would put it, negative 4.5-star matches that I look forward to watching in the future.
So there's one criticism that I can immediately see people looking at that list and coming up with, and that is that they are all WWE matches, none from WCW, TNA, AEW, Japan, anything like that.
Well, what I looked at, and the criteria is really important. Now, obviously, there have been huge houses. I debated putting everybody's favorite guy, CM Punk, in this because he drew a $1 million house. Nobody remembers the show because they remember the press conference. You know, it's called Brawl Out after that Chicago show. But I think it's sort of I hate to say false positive, but you draw $1 million house, you draw $1 million house, but they were going to his hometown. He's a big Chicago guy. They come out to support him. As a matter of fact, there was a time where they were going back to Chicago. How many times just beating that city up, shaking the people upside down for their money. And that's one thing right there. Were there 5-star matches? That's why I said there were so many 5-star matches, but with the criteria, you know, you could put Wembley in that. I've rewatched the MJF Adam Cole match. And I believe, even though they drew a ton of money and people at Wembley for the AEW, I think it was All In, correct?
Yeah, I was there for that.
You were there. What I'm looking at is that drew the house and that drew the money based on the novelty of AEW's first show in England, in Wembley, big stadium. It wasn't the match. It wasn't any particular match that drew that house. It was the AEW coming to Wembley Stadium for the first time. Now, this time around, you said they're drawing the same gate because they've raised the ticket prices, but the attendance is cut in half. And we don't even know what matches. So that's the thing. They could be promoting Wembley with a big match, a storyline, or something. Are there any matches advertised for Wembley?
Yeah, there's a few. The biggest one is Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson. The problem is the build-up is absolutely doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then the Tony Storm and Mariah May match, that build-up it had a strong angle, which you remember a few weeks ago, where Mariah May's got Tony Storm on the ramp and like bloodies her up with the heel of the shoe. And then ever since then, it just doesn't. Almost the build-up is almost like petered out. They keep trying to build up to it, but it's not hitting the mark. Yeah. So there's no one big match that everyone's saying, "God, we've got to be there." There's MJF and I think there's MJF and Will Ospreay as well for the international title.
Yeah, but they just had that match on TV for free.
Oh yeah, they're giving it away again. They're having the rematch.
But do you see what I mean? The anticipation for that match should have been all along, and then people would pay to see it. They've already seen it, and they won an hour. And now I have no doubt both guys can top it in a way, but it's kind of like seeing it, now it's over. What's next? I would say this too. I was going to put, but with the criteria, it doesn't qualify right now. The best of 3 series, or the 3-match series, I should say more specifically, between Samoa Joe and Punk and ROH. Those matches are awesome. I enjoy watching those. Daniels, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, TNA Sacrifice, one of the best technical, one of the most exciting matches I've ever seen. But did it draw these numbers? And was it a storyline? These things, If I take some of the criteria away, there's going to be even more 5-star matches in that. Let me think what else. Malenko Guerrero Classic in ECW. But did it draw this? That's what I'm looking at. There's plenty of 5-star matches. I would even say, just trying to think on New Japan, Okada, Kenny Omega, all their matches. I know Meltzer Radio. They're all just technically with the match. Five stars, or as he says, 5+ or 6 or 7 or 8. But I could not see how much money it drew, what the gate was. Obviously, Tokyo Dome shows are going to draw. But what kind of storyline am I looking at? What? Just the best? And then you have 3 matches? I put up 4 main criteria, and I was forced to eliminate matches that I truly enjoy still watching, like Omega Okada, Punk Joe, Joe Daniels, AJ. AJ and Abyss had some amazing matches in TNA. There's tons of them. Randy Orton has been part of a lot of them, but not in a position where these guys were in to draw the house. So I begrudgingly eliminated matches that my personal bias wanted to put them in, but according to those 4 bullet points or criteria, they get eliminated.
Okay. As promised, Stevie's making his way to the whiteboard once again, the smartboard, to talk about what went right in a couple of his personal 5-star favourite matches. So, Stevie, what match are we going to be starting off with?
All right, thank you, James. We're going to take a look at 2 specific moments that we talked about from our 5-star match list. Here we have SummerSlam 1992, Bulldog and Bret. And you would think, oh, it's just one of the regular roll-up pins. Not a big deal. They're not going to pop. This was one of the best finishes I've seen right here. Sunset flip right here. And as he comes down here, Bulldog hooks the legs. And you want to talk about a super tight pin right there. Look at that. Bret made sure, hook, lean forward, plant your head in the mat, and Bret can't get out of it. Essentially, Bret, I know, he called the whole match. There's history behind this match we won't get into. But here we go, 1, 2, 3, and look at the people. One of the best technical wrestling matches I've ever seen, and emotion right here. Look at that Wembley Stadium. Were you anywhere there, James? Little baby James?
I was, no, one of my friends was. He was 10 years old, and 9 years old, and he said he remembers 2 things from that night. The Undertaker came down in a hearse, and Legion of Doom came down on motorbikes.
Which Animal burned? He got off on the wrong side and ended up burning his boot to his leg. Little fun fact there. All right, so this was an amazing moment right here. Look at nobody does it like WWE with the crowd and everything, but going back to the pin real quick, just sunset flip into a tight cradle right there. You can't get any more technical than that, and that's all Bret. Bulldog really, really over too, and obviously going over in England is going to be huge. Came to the ring with Lennox Lewis, which was his first real exposure before Lennox Lewis was the Lennox Lewis that we know in America, at least. So really cool stuff. All right, next we have Hogan versus Warrior, WrestleMania 6. By the way, the video is flipped, although Hogan could be ambidextrous. I don't know. But in this case, boot with the left leg right there. I just laughed when I flipped that there. Now, the reason why this moment is incredible is no one kicked out of the Hogan leg drop, and Hogan never missed the leg drop as far as I knew. But here we go. Hogan's going to run. Ambidextrous, left-handed. Oh, he missed. That's why he missed it. He used his left leg right there. But after that, right into the splash. And 1, 2, 3. Look at the people. Once again, and Hogan and Warrior right up there. 5-star match. Awesome stuff. Go back to the pin here. Just the fact that Hogan missed the leg drop off the bat. Now, this is after Hogan hulked up after the Warrior press slam. So they both were very generous with their finishes. And this was a Pat Patterson match that he booked. And it was quite obvious because Halloween Havoc, when they rematched, Pat wasn't there to help him. This was one of the best matches these guys have ever had. And then they had the worst one. This is Warrior's quote. The worst one
I want to add a couple of things. One, I was hoping that you would analyze the test of strength where Ultimate Warrior's on his knees and then the camera
No,
angle is...
we don't want to get any kind of like, it's not for kids anyway, but we didn't want to get any extra, we'll save that for Patreon or OnlyFans.
Yeah. Here's one other thing is I always found it weird as a kid that Ultimate Warrior had a splash as a finisher. And I was like, that's always a fat man wrestler's finisher. So why does Ultimate Warrior have the splash as a finisher? Just because it's so simple.
Yeah, it's so simple and probably real because mostly everything he did was real. So he probably knocked the wind out of you for 3 seconds. But Hogan, obviously, 2 9/10. The Fire Pro Wrestling kick out at 9/10, 2.3, 2.99.
It wasn't a particularly great match, but Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 14, it did get everybody over in a match because Shawn was meant to turn back up later on down the line, but it took a lot longer than usual. Fan anticipation, fantastic, drawing huge money on the day. That pay-per-view did bonanza business, especially with Mike Tyson involved.
You want to talk about pain, never over. I mean, that was like the nail in the coffin for WCW, the beginning of nailing the coffin. Getting Tyson, you couldn't have paid him enough. You got your return off of that. Mike did a great job, man. That was the first celebrity I saw in a long time, maybe ever, that actually took their spot seriously and didn't treat it like they were the local DJ at the indie show doing a tag match.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same if Pee Wee Herman had turned up and did it.
You know what?
Or Jerry Piven.
Oh, Summerfest. I love it.
Yeah, and long-term company growth as well. I'd figure that maybe is one of the only matches. You can say The Rock and John Cena as well, I guess, would be a great build-up. And I think John Cena and The Rock, one of the two pay-per-views, I think the first one, 2012, that still holds the record for the highest buy rate in WWE history, wrestling history.
I would put the Punk and Cena, and I had it there. I had most of these matches in there. It would have been 30. The Punk and Cena Money in the Bank match, Chicago, once again. Drew a big house. Punk drew that house with Cena because it's hometown. Won the title. The actual match was technically a 5-star match. We'll see what Meltzer says about it. But what they did afterwards eliminated it from my criteria because, as I've said before, you can have Punk saying he's the real world champion, going to independence, showing up when he's not supposed to, not being part of the company or the roster, causing chaos everywhere. Like when he went to San Diego Comic-Con and crashed the panel, they did it for 2 to 3 weeks, and he just comes back on TV. So for drawing money in the historical reference, they completely squashed it months too early. Punk could have just been a free agent for 6 months until he just could have did so many more things, and he did nothing with that.
It's also one appreciated his feud with John Laurinaitis, because let me tell you, when he would come out, when CM Punk would come out, those people went, I won't say Steve Austin level, but it's close enough every single week when Punk came out as champion and he was facing John Laurinaitis. And then what do? You turn Punk heel. Hey, why not?
What do you think? Do you think there's actually going to be any kind of hope that there will be Punk versus Austin at WrestleMania? They've talked about it for God knows how long. They're both not getting any younger, but Punk looks great. Austin looks great. And he had that great match with Kevin Owens. You can call that a 5-star match, but the build-up sucked. They didn't really lock it in until 2 weeks before.
Well, we didn't even know it was a match. We sort of figured it out, but in fact, we didn't even know that was going to be a match. We didn't know if it was going to be an extended segment with a brawl. And it's never quite the same if it's an extended segment with the brawl, even if they do the exact same moves within. Unless that bell rings, and then bell rings and the referee counts 3 or whatever, it's not the same. And it's just a little thing, but it makes all the difference. I think Steve Austin subverted everybody's expectations in the most positive way imaginable, because I didn't think we'd be getting a 10-minute match or whatever it went to. And I didn't think it'd be that good. I didn't think he'd do anywhere near as much as he did. And I know he's wearing a t-shirt and everything, but he looked as great as someone in that spot and of that age, and with those expectations could possibly look.
I guess Steve has the same body dysmorphia I have, because With the way his arms and shoulders looked, I had no doubt he'd have a six pack. But maybe he just didn't think I'm not as big as I used to be. But dude, he's shredded, man. He looks great. Him and Kurt could almost be twins at this point with the kind of shed. I mean, nobody. Kurt is like an action figure, but Steve's not far behind him.